And we actually don't let them sleep for 4 nights. It's very important because in the end, what we need in this environment is people who have completely embraced the idea of growing by helping others.
Hey, you're listening to the School of Innovation podcast. Your host today is Adrian Rubstein. Adrian is an innovation manager at Mergroup in Latin America. On this episode, Adrian talks with Christian Tidona, founder and CEO at BioMedX, about science, entrepreneurship, and finding a cure for COVID.
So, hi Christian, and welcome to the School of Innovation. And you have such an interesting and impressive record, right? Scientist, biotech entrepreneur, business angel, and a founder of BioMedX, right? So, can you please share with our listeners what is BioMedX? Why did you start it, and why in Heidelberg in Germany?
Okay, so I have two hearts in my chest, one of a scientist and one of an entrepreneur. And when I finished my PhD in 1999 in Heidelberg, I already started my first company and have been starting companies ever since. But what I didn't like about, or what we were trying to do with all those startups is basically copy the Silicon Valley success story, which is basically taking an idea, building value around it, and then selling as fast as possible at a very high price. And I always wanted to build something which is more sustainable. As you might know, in Germany, most of these established companies are very old family-owned companies, such as Merck, for example, a company that is 350 years old and still owned by the same family. And this inspired me to strive for something different and build something which has a long-term perspective and creates impact. And this is why I started BioMedX Institute in 2013, so roughly 7 years ago. And the basic idea is of BioMedX to combine the best of the two worlds, academia and industry. As you know, it's very difficult to translate research results from academia into something which then is picked up by industry and creates value and becomes a very successful product. And this is basically because academia is quite good at turning money into knowledge, and industry is quite good in turning knowledge into money. And this sounds like it's the same language, but it's spoken backwards. And this is why it's very difficult to bridge this gap. And with BioMedX, we combine the best of these two worlds. On one hand, the academic side, creativity, free thought, ideas, curiosity-driven research. And on the other hand, industry, which is the know-how how to engineer have a solid product engineering with milestones and timelines and data sets that are highly reproducible. And with our model, we combine both of those worlds in one institute.
Sounds amazing and also complicated, right? But just to develop products or doing research, basic research, it costs a lot of money, right? And how did you start it? Did you have like a funding from an university or something like that, or?
Yeah, very good question. Actually, it always starts with being at the right place at the right time. And starting something like BioMedX with a long-term perspective, one thing was clear. I could not use venture capital because venture capital most of the time has a short-term investment perspective. It's all focused on an exit after a short period of time. I wanted to build something on the long term, something that grows organically, so venture capital was not an option. Second, public money was not an option because also public money, usually public funding is limited to a project phase, and then once the money ends, the project ends usually. So I needed to find a way to start it without venture capital and public funding. And this was possible because of very close collaboration with the company I already mentioned, Merck. I was together with Uli Betz, the head of innovation at Merck. I developed in 2011 something that's called the Merck Innovation Cup. We have just run this last week for the 10th year. And this Merck Innovation Cup is based on a global crowdsourcing approach and then on a local bootcamp to develop new ideas of bright young scientists from around the world. And we picked this up and developed a model which is based on this idea of global crowdsourcing, but has a second component, which is local incubation. So while the Merck Innovation Cup ends at the end of the bootcamp with the cash prize, BioMedX Institute then has a third phase, which is local incubation. So we move the winners of our bootcamp that had the best idea and the best project proposal physically to our institute together with his or her family. We organize visa, jobs for their spouses, kindergarten spots, houses, whatever they need. And then they live and work for up to 5 years at my institute on the campus of the University of Heidelberg. And this was possible because at the time, the supporter inside Merck, the global head of discovery research, Bernd Kirschbaum, I basically talked with him after we had this first successful Merck Innovation Cup and said, why don't we keep the talents we identify in this process for a while and let them do their experiments? And he liked this approach and said, if you can come up with a sustainable business model, I'm going to sponsor the first 3 projects. And this is a quite substantial amount of money. Each project is on average 4 million euros. And then I came up with this business plan. And based on the first 3 projects, I could basically start without venture capital and without public money. And this concept has been profitable from minute one. So we have been growing steadily and we don't need any external money.
Well, that's quite amazing that you could get money from doing innovation, right? Just started with a help at the beginning, and right now the machine is already moving. And I wanted to return to one term that you use, that is crowdsourcing model, right? And since this is an open crowdsourcing model, right, you get the best people from all around the world, right? And I would like to better understand how do you maintain the strategic discipline and the efficiency, the operation efficiency, just bringing all the guys together to just one place to do science.
So many of what we're doing in this crowdsourcing and then the bootcamp is very similar to what we do in the military. I did my military service in Germany, and then also I have lots of friends in Israel who did their military service and who basically started companies with people they've met during this military time, because this is a time where you get to know people very intensely and you learn how to trust people. And this is exactly what we're doing with this bootcamp. Basically, you have to imagine in this global crowdsourcing, when we put out calls for application worldwide at the best universities and research institutions, we receive between 200 and 600 project proposals from all around the world, 60, 70, sometimes 80 countries. And then we select the 15 brightest talents and invite them for this 5-day bootcamp to Heidelberg. We fly them in, they see each other for the first time. And on the first day, we have an exercise. It's called My Life, My Work, My Passions. This is everybody presents in front of everybody about their life, their work, and their passions. And everybody takes notes. And at the end of the day, we ask everyone to rank everybody else with whom they would like to collaborate during the bootcamp. And then I've developed a cluster analysis algorithm, which basically optimizes reciprocal likes, if you will, and determines the optimal group composition for 5 competing groups. And then on the next day, we tell them that in which groups they are. And then in those groups separately, we help them to develop these really outstanding project proposals. And we actually don't let them sleep for 4 nights. It's very important, because in the end, what we need in this environment is people who have completely embraced the idea of growing by helping others. And if you are a successful young scientist, usually top publications at very young age, you most of the time you have a very big ego, and you have learned how to navigate for yourself this academic system. But what we want is people who are not just brilliant scientists, but people who grow by helping others, meaning people who share their ideas, people who who help others. And in a normal assessment center, even if you can pretend being a nice person, basically, in 2 days, no problem. But in 4 nights without sleep, if you are a jerk, it will come out. And that's the people we then don't invite to become members of BioMedX. And then, of course, at the end of this process, we really end up with the brightest and also the most, the people with the best teamwork capabilities. And so far, our group leaders, we have started 14 groups. None of these group leaders has left BioMedX, or we had to let go because he or she did not embrace our core values.
Well, that's a quite interesting methodology that you're using. I never heard about it, and I would like to some of our listeners, they are not from the pharma or life science field, so I would like to ask you if the model that you just told about, if you know if the same model could be applied to another industries, or if you ever encounter someone that used the same methodologies.
Yeah, so far, there is, to my knowledge, worldwide no institute or no incubator that has a similar methodology, combining this global crowdsourcing with local incubation of the best talents of the world. But of course, I put a lot of effort in the last 7 years to make this model completely scalable. So something that can be translated into other geographies, maybe starting a BioMedX in Israel or in the United States, translating it into other technology fields, maybe nanotechnology, maybe information technology, material sciences. So at the moment, I'm working with different university campuses and potential partners worldwide on scaling the model, which now in Heidelberg has reached critical mass. It's around 60 different researchers from more than 25 countries, and try to scale it globally. Yeah.
And we cannot avoid the elephant in the room, right? We are talking about COVID-19, and I know that you are working on a couple of things to try to measure the pandemic and try to solve it. Can you mention a little bit about what BioMedX is working right now?
Yeah. So when this pandemic started, and as I told you in the beginning, I'm a virologist, so I saw this coming already in January. And this is also why at BioMedX we did not have a single day of real downtime, because we changed our daily work very early. We changed the infrastructure in a way that social distancing and hygiene is possible. And but at the same time, I got the idea that, especially with our model that brings together the brightest scientists from around the world, this might be a good approach to prepare for the next pandemic threat. At the moment, as you might know, the main problem of this pandemic is that all our technologies that are used to develop a new vaccine or a new therapy against a new virus is just taking too long to react very quickly to such a pandemic threat. As you saw, within less than 6 months, half the world was shut down, and there's a huge impact. And what we would need is completely new technologies that don't take 5 years or 10 years to develop a new therapeutic or a new vaccine, but which would result with high confidence in less than 6 months in a new therapeutic approach, which can be tested very quickly in humans, and then be applied to a large population. And this means all our processes in drug development need to be, we need to go back to the drawing board. And this is why we started what we call the Rapid Antiviral Response Platform. And this is actually a set of 8 different typical BioMedX projects, BioMedX groups, if you will, each of them with a 5-year lifespan and 5 million euros in budget, which then would focus on one aspect, very specific aspect of the development of new antivirals. And I've split up as a virologist, what's quite obvious is when you look at the top virology labs in the world, most of them are completely focused and specialized on one or two different virus species. But what we need to react to a pandemic, because you never know what virus is coming, we need platforms which actually look at the same time at all known animal and human pathogenic viruses. And so I've divided this problem up into 8 different so-called targets within the virus and its host cell. And each of these modules would then concentrate in the complete breadth, on the complete breadth of known animal and human pathogenic viruses, and develop platforms that allow this very fast reactions.
Well, for what I'm hearing, you're saying that you can, for COVID-19, it took a couple of weeks to really understand which virus was. So using this platform, you could shorten this period not only for identification and also for a potential treatment in shorter time, right?
That's the task we would put out in the 8 calls that are running parallel. That's the beauty of our model. We can basically formulate a problem, and in this case is coming up with an idea for a platform that allows to come up or to produce, identify and produce, in this case, 10,000 doses of a new antiviral drug within less than 6 months. And then we do the crowdsourcing approach and look for really brilliant novel ideas. And I think if there is a model that can come up with something which is, because it's extremely difficult to develop those technologies, but if there is a model that can do it, I think ours is pretty close to what you need to approach this.
That's amazing to hear. And finally, you've managed to successfully combine science, which is typically not that glamorous, with the entrepreneurship, which is typically very sexy, right? And I would like to know if there's any advice that you can give to young scientists who would like to, build their own companies or try to go in that pathway.
That's a very good question. There is what we are trying to teach our we call them fellows at BioMedX is that they should try as early as possible in their career, try to find out what kind of people they are. And there is, in this research field, there is 3 types of people and anything in between. So first type, of course, academic career, you become a professor, right? That's typical academic. Then you would be the academic type. Second type is the industry type, going into a big company, become an employee of a big company, and then use this infrastructure of the big company. But and then the third one is you are an entrepreneur. You start your own company. And there's these 3 major types, I think, of personalities, and there is certain traits that direct you towards one of these fields or fields in between. And as I mentioned at BioMedX, we are at this interface between academia and industry. If you look at the 3 different directions like a Venn diagram, so you have 3 circles with intersections, we are at this intersection between the circle of academia and the circle of industry. Entrepreneurship requires a completely different trait because as an entrepreneur, of course, you have ownership of what you're doing, but most of the time you don't have the freedom you have in academia, for example, to do curiosity-driven research. You're very much focused on basically multiplying the money of your investors, and you need to fully obey to this, and you need to feel happy in this environment. And so I would not recommend anyone who doesn't feel comfortable in this situation to become an entrepreneur. You will be super unhappy.
Yeah, so I would like to thank you for this advice, right? I think that every young scientist would like to understand which is the best personality that they have. And just before the wrap up, if any of our listeners want to learn more about you or BioMedX, what will be the best ways?
Yes, so easiest way is go to our website, which is bio.mx. And there's all contact details of all major people. Get in touch with our group leaders, for example, and ask them how they came to BioMedX and what drives them. You can contact me directly. My contact details are there as well. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and I'm very happy to connect with young scientists and aspiring entrepreneurs around the world. And of course, and what's most important in the life of of a young scientist, no matter in which of those three directions you go, you need mentors that help you to avoid making the same mistakes all over again. And I had mentors throughout every single stage of my professional life, and this is where I love to give back. I have quite a few mentees helping them. So if you're interested in getting in touch, my contact details are public.
Great. I'll add this information in the show notes. And Christian, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you very much for taking this time to talk with us.
Likewise. Thanks a lot.